All right, good morning, Facebook friends. Listen, I don't know what happened to y'all, but y'all froze. And there's nothing wrong with me. I've been here all this time waiting on y'all to show up, and you're 5 minutes late. What's the deal with you? You missed something good, but look, that's why you should come to the Connection unless you live in California, and then you should be here at least once a month. We're going to have fun today. We're going to talk about something that I'm referring to as gender-proof God. Now let me tell you something. Let me tell you what I almost did, but I didn't do it because I didn't want to freak people out. I started to call this transgender God. Now, the reason why people would misunderstand that is because we abuse words all the time. You've heard the word transition, you've heard the word transcend, and you've heard the word transgender. The pedestrian way that we use the word transgender refers to a female changing to male or male changing to female, but really, that's the pedestrian use of the word. But what transgender actually means is beyond gender. When we transition, we're moving beyond this octave to the next octave. When we transcend, we're changing, but we're changing up. So the real powerful use of the word transgender is beyond gender. I want to tell you about a God that is beyond gender today, or if this is more comfortable to you, we'll call this gender-proof God. To get there, I'm in the book of Judges, and when I was here with you last week, we talked about what do you do when the props in your life are just kicked out from under you? What do you do? Well, God gave us a formula, almost, to how do I get out of this morass? How do I get out of this labyrinth of darkness and depression? There is a beautiful way. I can't go into it today, but get on Facebook, look at the message from last week. It'll help you. I want to just briefly take you through chapter 2. We're going to end up in chapter 4 today. But in chapter 2, you might want to read this when you get home, just see what I'm talking about. This is all real biblical intonation and tone. This has got all the these and the thous and all that stuff in it. But it really is just a practical thing that's happening in life. And it's happening right now. It happened back here like this. An angel of the Lord came from Gilgal to Bochum and said, I made you to go up out of Egypt and have brought you into the land which I promised to your fathers. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you. And you shall not make league with the inhabitants of the land. You're going to tear their stuff up. Everything that you see that makes you know how they think. I don't want you, this is God talking to the Jewish people, I don't want you to get involved in that. So this whole chapter is about what happens to people when you agree with a low form of thought. Be not conformed, Paul said, to this world. Here's the word again. But be ye transformed. The word transform means to go beyond form. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You got to get your mind changed. If there's anything happening in your life right now that is uncomfortable to you, it can only continue to happen to you if you agree with it. Did you know that nobody can even kill you? They can point a gun straight at you and be ready to pull the trigger, but if you do not agree with it, they can't kill you. You say, now that's an audacious statement. Hey, I'm an audacious guy, and I serve an audacious God. And you don't understand who and what you are. And when you agree with something lower than the truth of your being, by your own power, you bring that you agree with into your life experience. I'm trying to get you to stop agreeing with things that are not supposed to be in your life. Mm-hmm. If you will not agree, I want to tell you a little story. Matter of fact, my friend Andrew Fry is he's the one who told me this. He is always attracted to people that are disabled or what society puts as handicapped or whatever. He's doing concerts all over the place, and I don't know where he was, but he was doing a concert. He saw this guy in a wheelchair with a very disfigured face. It locked on him. He said, I know this guy's going to come. Sure enough, as soon as the concert's over, the guy rolls his wheelchair, makes a beeline for Andrew. And he gets there. His face is not only disfigured, but as a result of the disfigurement of his face, he can't talk plain. But he's not retarded. He just can't. He's just disfigured. So he says, I like that music that you're playing, and they began a conversation, and all the kinds of music they like. Andrew, do you know this? And Andrew said, yes. Do you know this? Yes. He said, you want to know what happened to my face? And Andrew said, yeah, I do. He said, I stuck a shotgun in my mouth, and I put my toe on the trigger, and I pulled the trigger, and I blew my face off. He said, you know why I didn't die? Andrew said, no. He said, because I didn't want to. He said, why did you think you wanted to die? He said, because I hated myself. He said, I was nothing but a screw up. Everything I did was just crap. He used saltier language than that. And when Andrew told me I was already on a vein like I'm talking to you about today, I want to tell you something. When Jesus was being arrested, according to the story, when the soldiers came to get him, they said, we're looking for Jesus. He said, I am he. That's a powerful statement. And when he made the statement, they fell back. Twice this happened. Finally they said, will you go with us peaceably? He said, yes. He said, I want to let you know something. He said, you couldn't take me if I didn't let you. He said, no man can take my life from me. He said, I lay it down of myself. I have this authority from my Father that I can lay my life down and I can take it back up. This is not just an exclusive to Jesus. Why did Jesus come to begin with? To show you and me what it looks like to live a divine life in a human expression. This is what a God-man can do. This is what a God-woman can do. This is what a God-person can do. You have it from the original text in the first chapter that everything, once you were created in the image and the likeness of God, that everything that God ever made, which was all made by the Word, remember? Is under your authority by divine edict. Everything that moves. So nothing can come into you unless you agree with it. A long time I did a series on what we call the porter ministry. A porter is one who stands in the door, and everybody is one. And the porter says, this is what comes in, and this is what goes out. You are the porter of your life. You have the authority of your life. You've been given this authority by Almighty God that is not under any restrictions whatsoever. So in chapter 2, it all sounds like that there's, if you read this the way we've been conditioned, it's like there's a capricious God up there somewhere that is reacting to what people are saying and doing. But the truth is, the entire universe mirrors back to you what you're thinking and how you're acting. So Psalm said, look, to the pure, you show yourself pure. To the merciful, you show yourself merciful. To the froward, or to the incorrigible, you show yourself froward or incorrigible. What's happening? The entire universe, the whole expression of God that we can see, even through telescopes, is mirroring back to you and me what you and I are thinking and acting on. It mirrors it back. Some people call it karma. Paul called it sowing and reaping. Whatever you sow, that's what you reap. Does this make any sense to you?
Yes.
This is just a law. This is a life law. You don't have to read the Bible for this to happen for you. You don't have to believe that there is God for this to happen to you. All you've got to do is get in the flow of law. And it already is happening for you. Now, when I say get in the flow, you're in the flow. And everybody is successful. Everybody is successful. Do you like your success? Well, so how do you mean I'm successful? I mean, you may have a poverty mentality, and you may be producing more poverty in your life than you know what to do with. You're just successful at being impoverished. Or you may be wealthy, and you may be very wealthy. Either way, you're successful. And you're successful at whatever you're thinking, whatever you're doing. Your thoughts and your actions are coming to pass in your life. You can't do anything else because you are a child of God, and that's how powerful you are. So however you're thinking, however you're acting, that's what's happening in your life. That's what this whole book is about. And so chapter 2 is about these people making league, getting all comfortable with the people that they were brought into this area, not to be like them, but to change the thing. Listen, God didn't put you here to be a thermostat. So you can say, here's how hot it is here. I ever tell you about the guy that went someplace in South America or Africa to sell shoes? And when he got there, as soon as he got there, nobody was wearing shoes, and he called back and said, you got to get me home because they don't wear shoes down here. So they brought him home. Said, we're going to try that again. Sent another guy down there, and he said, oh my God. He said, I just got here. Send me all the shoes you can. Nobody has shoes. Are y'all good? Do you understand how your perspective on whatever's happening in your life is setting the tone? Because you're not a thermostat. I mean, you are a thermostat. You're not a thermometer. You are the one that goes and says, this is how it's going to be here. Amen. I'm going to set the tone. Don't you you know anybody in your life that you love it for them to walk into the room? Besides me. Do you? It's just when they walk in, it's just, I mean, you can't help but smile. Listen, I tell people all the time that are having problems with depression, I say, look, you get real depressed, think about me. And and they smile right when I say it. I say, that's what'll happen. Every time you think about me, you'll just smile. Look, whatever you have to think of, if it's a monkey standing on his head, if it makes you smile, think about the monkey standing on his head. Good? Chapter 2 is all about this. I've spent 10 minutes on chapter 2. Is that all right? And so go read this and see what I'm talking about. Here's what I want to leave with you out of chapter 2. You will not eliminate that you agree with. Did you hear that? You will not eliminate out of your life whatever you're agreeing with. I love what I heard Bob Proctor say about Jesus. He said, Jesus made no agreement with blindness. That's good stuff right there. Listen, if you go to the doctor tells you there's something wrong with you, you'll only experience that if you agree with it. If you don't agree with it, get your head somewhere else, because you are not a victim and you are not under the jurisdiction of your doctor. Right. I have no aversion to doctors. Some of the most beautiful people in the world that I know are doctors. Wonderful people. And many of them mean well. But many of them are indoctrinated to medicine in the same way people have been indoctrinated to Scripture. And others have been indoctrinated to politics. If you have your Bible, go to Galatians chapter 3. And if you don't, do it on your phone. Go to Galatians chapter 3. I don't want you to think that I'm making this up. Galatians chapter 3. Do you know what the word baptized means? The word baptized comes from baptismo, which means to completely immerse. So if you are baptized into an idea, you are immersed. It was said that they were baptized unto Moses. Then they were baptized unto John. Then they were baptized unto Jesus. In other words, they were immersed in the Moses idea, in the John idea, in the Jesus idea. If you get baptized, you are immersed. Now here's what it says in Galatians chapter 3, verse 27. For as many of you as have been baptized or immersed into Christ have put on Christ. Do you see that? Do you see the immersion in that? Don't just say yes because you think that's what I want you to say. I'm really asking you, do you see that what I just said is right there in that verse? If you've put Christ on, then you're wearing it. you're completely immersed in it. Why am I calling Christ it? Because I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. Because the correct reference to Christ is it in this setting. But people think that Christ is Jesus' last name. Why do we call it Jesus Christ? Is it inappropriate to call Jesus? Absolutely not. It's beautiful to call Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ. Why? Because Jesus came and showed us this is what a Christed man looks like. This is how a Christed man operates. This is how a man who is completely immersed in the Christ knows how to operate. Watch this. When you put on Christ, verse 28, there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither bond nor free, there is neither male nor female, for ye are all one in Christ. This is the zone where there is absolutely no polarization whatsoever. There is no Democrat and Republican. There's no Baptist and Pentecostal. There's no male and female. You can't get any more primal than this. And do you understand what I'm saying? So Christ, then, represents the only begotten Son. Now here's the mystery. The Christ, Colossians chapter 1, Paul, the same guy that wrote this, wrote what I'm about to say. He said, this is the mystery that's been hidden for ages and generations, is now revealed to the saints. What is a saint? A saint is one who has a God consciousness. Okay? So when your mind is on God and your understanding is God is living in me, God's name is I am, that this zone in me is the Christ zone. And the Christ zone contains not one iota of polarization. Now let's go way back to Genesis, first human story. A naked man, a naked woman, a talking snake, two magic trees. Adam, Eve, the serpent. All the way back there. The polarization did not actually begin with the ingesting of the fruit of that tree. It actually already started. Can I show you? Adam was given the job of naming the animals before the tree incident. So it was when he was naming the animals. You need to follow this because I'm giving y'all so much stuff right now. But this is really good for your life because this belongs to you. Adam was given the job, the duty of naming the animals. What was a tiger before Adam named it a tiger? What was a lion before Adam named it a lion? It was in the process of naming the animals. Let me ask you a question. You still have the power to name everything that's coming into your life. What are you naming it? Are you naming it disaster? Or are you naming it a blessing? If all things are working together for good to them that have a God consciousnness, what's the problem? I don't care. It can look like a dodo bird or a is it a toucan or a toucan? What do you know what I'm talking about? The big bird. How's he fly with that beak? Yeah, that's what man, it looks like he's been a perpetual nosedive.
Toucan is 3, 1 and 1.
Oh, okay. And that's private between. The polarization began when we started categorizing things. This is this, this is this, this is this. So once you do that and you make things into identities, you're drawing lines. You're dividing things. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. So the tree then was just the natural next thing to do. I'm going to eat the tree of knowledge. Why? Because I want to know more about this polarization. You know what our politicians do? They try to educate themselves on what everybody thinks about a subject to find their position. What are they? They're thermometers. But every once in a while, a politician comes along and becomes a thermostat. Says, I don't like the way this stuff is. Now, I'm not praising either one. I'm identifying to you what happens when we segregate, compartmentalize, draw lines. The more proficient we get in drawing lines, the more anchored we become to this octave of this and that. And we're trying to solve this with that, and then sooner or later that goes bust, and now we got to help that with this. Because there's no end to it. It just goes on and on. It's over and over. Am I making any sense to you?
Yes.
So, if in this level, once we have, and I ask this question all the time, if that tree was forbidden in Genesis, if the fruit of that tree was forbidden then, when did it get okay with God? Would it not still be forbidden? Is that not why the Christ zone is a zone that has none of that stuff in it? We have people in churches pulling their hair out over whether somebody's sexual orientation is appropriate or not. And the more concerned we become about whether you're homosexual, heterosexual, bisexual, transsexual, whatever sexual, the more anchored we get to the zone that we're trying to get out of.
Right.
So if I'm going to call God He, that's a restriction I've placed on God. If I'm going to call God she, that's a restriction I've placed on God. And so in this level, we're having men groups, women groups, this group, that group. Every time we have a group, we draw a circle around it, we put a parameter around it, and that becomes the restriction that we've placed on God. I'm not mad at anybody. I'm just telling you that we're doing things saying we want to have a closer walk with Jesus, saying we want to know God better and more, but we're constantly revisiting the same old crap. God, deliver us from the circle that the elephant is tied to a stake since he was a baby by a rope he could easily break, but he won't break it because he's conditioned to stay in this circle. What circles are you in today because you have been conditioned to stay in that circle?
Wow.
Chapter 3, a guy named Othniel became the next judge. He set the people free for 40 years. You know why? Because they got tired of being oppressed, and they cried out and said, somebody help us. And a guy said, I'll help. It happened to be Caleb's nephew. 40 years of rest came with Othniel. Then a guy named Ehud. What a name. Ehud. We give us Ehud. What is that deal in the baseball thing? If he can't do it, nobody can. What's it?
That's our man. If he
Can't do it, no one can. That's the one I wanted. Ehud can. If he can't do it, nobody can. Ehud was left-handed. And it was right. He was left-handed. Ehud was left-handed. And he was the next judge because the people got tired of being oppressed by the next guy that was oppressing them. This is what happens over and over in our life. When you get tired enough of something that's bothering you, you'll do a breakout. The way the people did a breakout is they got a new leader. This leader was Ehud. And the guy that was messing with them was a big fat guy. And Ehud snuck into his secret chamber by subterfuge, stabbed him in the belly so deep that the knife went in and he couldn't pull it out because the haft had even gone in, and stabbed him in the bowels. The stories of the dirt came out. This delivered the people for another length of time. Then they got back into it again. In other words, what happened? They started agreeing with their surroundings. Every time they'd agree with their surroundings, they'd start becoming oppressed by their surroundings. You're not supposed to agree with your surroundings. You're supposed to be the Lord of your surroundings.
Right.
This is what Israel's story is all about. You're supposed to be the Lord. You're supposed to be the king. Christ came to make us kings and priests unto God. What does that mean? It means I have a direct connection with I am, and I have authority over all this stuff. I'm a king and I'm a priest. That's what Jesus came to make you understand. I'm all over the scripture today, aren't I? But look, this is the shotgun approach. Then after Ehud, there was a guy named Shamgar. And Shamgar got so incensed over the oppression of the Philistines that one day he'd had enough, and they were trying to take everybody's crops and stuff. And he said, "You're not taking my crops. You're not taking them, not today." So all he had was an ox goat. You know why all he had was an ox goat? Because they got all the guns. They got all the knives. They took the enemy took all that stuff where people couldn't protect themselves, and all he had left was an ox goad. They let him have that. Now an ox goad was a long thing with a sharp point on the end of it. 600 Philistines came to take his stuff, and Shamgar said, "Not today. Not a thermostat today. I mean, I'm a thermostat today, not a thermometer." I get those things confused all the time. That's the problem with polarity, polarization. You forget which one is which. It's like all of a sudden you forget. Oh, wait, I'm a Democrat. I shouldn't be thinking like that. Oh, I'm a Republican. I shouldn't be thinking like that. Oh, I'm a Christian. I shouldn't be thinking like that. And after your tongue is hanging out and you step on your tongue 2 or 3 times, it's like, oh, my God, there's got to be a better way than this. And Shamgar said, "I've had it. You're not taking my stuff today." And he started slinging him a spot. He started clearing him a circle with his ox goad. Before he got done, he killed 600 Philistines with an ox goad. Now, you can't do that. Yes, you can. When you get pissed enough and you start realizing, I've been living beneath my privileges and I'm not doing it anymore. So we've got Othniel, we've got Ehud, we've got Shamgar, and then watch God throw a curve in chapter 4. Here comes the curve, chapter 4. Her name is Deborah. Here we are in this deeply patriarchal society, and God throws a little wink down. Said, "Oh, y'all thought y'all had me trapped over there in the Shamgars, the Othniels, and the Ehuds, and the Calebs, and all that. You thought you had me trapped? Let me just show you a little something here." He said, "Debbie, let's call that palm tree your palm tree. And you just sit under there, and I'm going to give you wisdom, and people are going to come and start asking you, 'Miss Debbie, what do I do?'" Now, today, if you say anything about Miss Debbie, they try to eat her. Y'all didn't get that?
Yeah.
That was deep. You know what? You got. I just want to make sure you get my stuff. I don't want to waste that stuff. Miss Debbie, what do I do today? And she'd give them words of wisdom, because what we found out is God is gender proof. God's not restricted to work through a man. He can work through a woman just as good as he can through a man. Because God's not even paying attention to that anyway. As a matter of fact, in the Christ zone, that stuff don't even exist.
Amen.
Ooh, that just got good, didn't it? I told you we was going to have fun today. See, we serve a gender-proof God. So if you have made yourself be small because of your gender, one way or the other, I want to set you free from that today, because God is not restricted by your gender unless you are restricting God by your gender. So Miss Deborah's sitting under the tree, and the people are getting oppressed again, this time by King Jabin. And his top guy is Sisera, the captain of his host, the one that runs all his military stuff. His name is Sisera. And Sisera is just wreaking havoc on all the Jewish people. And Miss Debbie's had enough of it. But she's married to a guy named Lapidoth. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. I didn't even take time to look it up. I'm just telling you that this is a married woman. In other words, she's not on a campaign to try to destroy the home. She's not trying to destroy her tradition. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just telling you, she wasn't doing that. She's a married woman. She has a husband. But we don't know anything about the husband. Why? Because the husband's not plugged into I Am like Miss Debbie's plugged into I Am. So Miss Debbie's plugged into I Am, and there's a guy that is the equivalent of Sisera for the Jews. His name is Barak. Barak. Accent on the first syllable. Barak. That's his name. And so she calls him and she says, "Look, you got to go get these people off of us. God's with you. I'm telling you, God's with you." And so he says, "Well, I'll go." But he said, "The only way I'm going to go is if you go with me." "Give me some men who are stout-hearted men who will fight for the right they adore." Boy, that's old song. That was one of my mother's favorite songs. I can't even remember the guy's name that sang that. Does it matter? Yes, it matters because I'm trying to think of it. Barak. Come here. Well, I'll go if you'll go with me. She said, okay, I'll go with you. But let me tell you what's going to happen. You're not going to get the honor, and no man's going to get the honor. A woman's going to get the honor of this victory. Just letting you in your patriarchal society know that the daddy papa's not going to get the kudos for this. It's going to be a woman that gets the kudos. He says, I don't care. I'm just not going without you. And that's not even his wife. How inappropriate. And so they go. And there's 900 chariots. They have no chariots. Israel has no chariots, but the enemy has 900 chariots. That's supposed to mean something. You know, that's a whole different apparatus in war. That means horses are involved. That means that they'll come at you with their chariot that's all insulated with iron and all that kind of stuff, and they just crouch down behind it and they give you a little bitty target, and the horses are coming. And I don't know if you've ever been run at by a horse, but the chances are you're going to move. You know, if a horse comes around, especially if he's dragging a chariot behind him, and especially if the guy in the chariot's got a sword, you know, there's a reason to get out of the way. 900 of these are coming. And she says, but you're going to take them. So they go out, and sure enough, the thought of Deborah gets into this army, and they say, I think we can. I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. This is the can that I live in. I invite you. There's plenty of room in this can. Come live in this can with me. And this day they said, I think we can. And as they moved toward their enemy, the enemy became discombobulated, and they literally started taking them out one man at a time. Sisera saw the writing on the wall, and he jumped out of his chariot, started running for his life. And he was going to get away. As he ran into an area that was occupied by a person that King Jabin, his boss, was in league with. And he happened to recognize the tent. And it was the tent of Jael, the wife of Haben. And he saw her, and she saw him. She said, come in, my lord. Come in here. I know you're tired. She opened the tent. She lets him in. He said, I'm exhausted. She said, lay down here. She covered him up with a mantle, you know, put it over him a little, covered it, put it on. He said, I'm so thirsty. Would you just give me a little bit of water? She said, I'll do better than that. I'll give you some milk. She gave him some milk, and he drank the milk, and he crashed. She walked over and she got a tent peg, big old nail. She got the hammer that drives the tent peg. She went to Sisera. She put the tent peg right on his temple, and she drove that tent peg through that man's temple and nailed his head to the ground. You don't pull on Superman's cape. You don't spit into the wind. You don't pull the mask off the old Lone Ranger, and you don't mess around with jail. Or you'll end up in jail. And so she goes to the front, and here comes Barak. She says, hey, I think the guy you're looking for is in here. He runs over. There's the last survivor, no longer surviving. What is the point of this story? How gory can a woman be? How gory do you have to? It's not even about that. It's a story. And the story is this. God is not restricted to gender. God is not restricted to being referred to as he or she. If you refer to God as he, that's the restriction you've placed on God. If you refer to God as she, that's the restriction you've placed on God. But let me tell you what the word Israel means.
Come on.
Is comes from Isis, the moon god, the feminine. Ra comes from the Egyptian sun god, the masculine. El comes from Elohim, which is the plurality of attributes, but means one. The female, male, one. How big is your God? How many restrictions have you placed on your God? I am the Lord that healeth thee. I am come that you might have life and you might have it more abundantly. I am the way, the truth, and the life. The words that I speak to you, they are spirit and they are life. I am the first and I am the last. I am the beginning and I am the end. Wait a minute. Is there a beginning and an end? If there is, I'm both. It all is right here, right now. I am Alpha and Omega. I am He that was and is to come. I am that I am. What do you need me to be? I am that. Are y'all good?
Yes.
I am not restricted by pronouns. I am not restricted by your ideas of what I can or cannot do. I can do all things. I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. I serve a gender-proof God.
Amen.
I didn't come here to champion the cause of homosexuals, transsexuals, transgender, or heterosexuals. I have not come here to champion the cause of adulterers or fornicators or liars or cheaters. I am come to tell you that you may be paying attention to that, but God is not giving it any thought whatsoever.
That's right.
For thine eye is too fair to behold iniquity. I have seen no perverseness in Jacob, nor can I find any iniquity in Israel. What? After all the stuff's been going on down there, you don't see anything? I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at the I am that is the light that is inside you. Whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Pentecostal, Baptist, churchgoer, non-churchgoer, believer, non-believer, everybody's a believer. It's just, what do you believe? Are y'all here?
That's right.
Let's get rid of the polarization. And whatever is coming at you, if you don't want it, don't agree with it. Listen, this is real important too. It's another lesson, but I'm going to give it to you real fast. Don't resist it.
Right.
Because the moment you start resisting it, you're focused on it.
Right.
When you focus on it, you're giving your power to it. Leave it alone. Let it be. There will be an answer.
Amen.
Let it be. Are y'all good?
Yes.
I know. I don't even have to ask you if this is good. I know this is good. This is just good stuff. And it's not good stuff because I said it. It's good stuff because God said it. It's good stuff because it is the Word of God to us today. Are you encouraged?
Amen.
Are you better?
Yes.
Look, don't be sick. Don't be sick. Don't be sad. Don't be sad. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. You say, I wouldn't, I just can't help it. Yes, you can help it. Don't agree with it. Get out of agreement with it. Is there an amen in this house?
Amen.
Say one big enough for Facebook.
Amen.
God bless you.